now. Okay. So, live and audio files. Let's go ahead and take a look at, what happens behind the scenes whenever you bring an audio file into Ableton Live. So, if I pull up my music over here, DJ set music, and let's go ahead and let's look at, let's not go by that far. Well, let's go to some melodic stuff here. I'm going to pull one of these tracks into Ableton Live. So a couple things, well, let's grab some AIF files, not MP3s. Australia benefit, this is going to be all, yeah, okay, cool. Let's get the, oh, this is a good one, the promise. So I'm going to drag this in, and what you'll notice is when I drag it in, what's going to happen is it makes a .asd file. The .asd file, as far as I can tell, that .asd file stands for Ableton session data. I'm pretty sorry, Ableton session data. Basically what this is for is if I change something in here and I want to save it, so every time it loads that track into a new session, it'll open up with that information. So for example, if I have this track and I only ever wanted to loop the first bar, I'm going to go ahead and speed this up for now. And I literally only wanted to loop this first bar, and that's all I wanted to do ever. What I could do is I can save this. I can click save right over here. And now it just saved this loop information into this .asd file here. So now anytime I drag this track into a new session in Ableton Live, it's going to have that loop set up in it automatically. Or if I go in here and I say, all right, I want this to be like that. I want it to be transposed down 3 half steps. Then I hit save. And now that's saved in this .asd file. The .asd file, as you can see, is less than a megabyte. Every single audio file that you have on your computer has a .asd file once you bring it into Ableton Live. Every song or audio file or whatever it is that you have brought into Ableton Live is going to get a .asd file. So that .asd file is, you need to make sure you keep that ASD file if you make any changes. Now, most of the time, I don't click save in here. Like, it's very rare that I actually click save anymore. If you were DJing with Ableton Live, I would say you should click that save button so you can drag your songs into different sessions and stuff. But if you're just using Ableton Live to produce, there's no reason to click that save button because all the data gets saved with the session. So if I make some changes to my clip or whatever, it's all going to get saved with that session. So I don't need to worry about saving that separately. Wow, my hands are super dry. Yeah. Walker and Roy's fire opened for them. But you opened for them or fire opened for them? Sorry, I forgot to mute me drinking water. Yeah, these dudes are actually really good friends of mine, Sam and Gavin. So this track here, let's put this up here. All right, cool, yep. So yeah, any file that you drag into Ableton Live is going to get that .asd file. So don't delete it. Oh, nice. That's cool. Great. Whereabouts? Where did you open up for them? All right. Whenever you drag the file into live, it analyzes the audio and creates a .asd file in the same folder on your hard drive. Yes. So don't delete it. If you make changes to the audio file's clip, those changes are saved to the session, not to the clip. So if you drag that same audio file into a new session, it will not have the changes. So that's basically what we just talked about there. And that's right here. You can see the window here. If you're going to be using Ableton Live to kind of put together a DJ set, if you're doing everything with modern songs, any kind of songs that are after like the year 2000, you shouldn't have to do a lot of work to them. But if you're doing stuff with like older songs, for example, if you're doing something with like James Brown, for example, let's see here. See if I got James Brown on here. James Brown. I don't know what that is. I probably don't have it on here. It's on my other computer. Let's see. Anything in music? No, it's not gonna. Oh wait, DJ tracks maybe. All right, here we go. Let's. I don't know if this is gonna work though. Any kind of nervous stuff. No, but if you have some old funk stuff or whatever, I don't really have any stuff on here. It's on another hard drive that's not here. But, yeah, I don't know. But if you had something that was like an older track from like the 70s or 60s or whatever, it would, Curtis Mayfield. Did you see Curtis Mayfield? I don't think I have any Curtis Mayfield on my computer. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff I could play, but I don't have it on here, so sorry. But anything like that, it's not going to line up correctly. You're going to have to like mess with it and do a whole bunch of stuff. Hold on a second. Let's see. Let's just see something. Oh, you were just saying, yeah. I get it. Hold on. Let's see if I have something in here. Dropbox. Music. This one. I don't think this is going to have. This is not going to be, hold on a second. I'm looking at my computer here. I don't think I have anything old, like that old. It's all like more modern stuff right now. Yep, I don't know. Sorry, I don't have a good example for that right now. But you'll have to go in and do a lot of work to it. I'll find something and I'll show you tomorrow or the next day. But align the song to the grid, yeah. So we'll talk about this stuff in another day because I want to go over some basic like DJing stuff in Ableton Live or how to put together DJ sets in Ableton Live. I think it's a really useful thing to know how to do. So we're gonna go ahead and put that. We're gonna talk about that on another day here. All right. So let's do this. Boop, boop, boop. Ableton racks. Yes. All right, cool. So this stuff is pretty fun. Ableton Live has all these different racks. And now we're kind of starting to get into things a little bit deeper. Into some of the instrument stuff in Ableton Live. So all these here. The main ones we're going to talk about are the drum racks and the instrument racks. And the effect racks are basically the same as an instrument rack, just without the instrument. So basically what we're going to talk about today is the instrument racks and the drum racks. Let's start talking about the drum racks. The drum racks are basically, I think somebody the other day was asking if they could drag their own samples in, and it's super, super easy. The answer is yes, you can do it. It's really, really easy to do. What we're going to do here is I'm going to go into my Ableton Live. And go here to make a new MIDI clip here, a MIDI track rather. I'm going to get rid of this track. We don't need that one in here. Don't need this one either. Whoa, whoa. 90. All right, so now let's go in here and let's make a little drum kit to play along some percussion stuff for this track. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and in here in my drums, and I can do it from drums or I can do it from instruments, but if I do it from drums, you can see there's this drum rack in here. Same thing here in instruments. If I go to instruments, there's a drum rack right here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag the drum rack in like that. Boop. And down here in the bottom of my screen, you can see it's got my drum rack. There we are. Okay, so now each one of these cells can be a different drum sound, and they've got all these different ones in here. You can see when you mouse over it down in the bottom down here, it gives you a suggestion of what you could drop in there. You can ignore that suggestion if you want. You don't have to like listen to it at all. But I recommend starting your drum racks, starting your drum kits at C1. Now, one thing about this, if I press a key on my keyboard, you're going to see, whoa, sorry. You're going to see things light up. Those cells are lighting up because that's what keys I'm pressing on my keyboard. And a good word of advice, if you're ever playing with a drum kit and you're like, I'm not hearing my sounds. Why am I not hearing my sounds? The reason why you're not hearing your sounds is because you're probably in the wrong octave. That's like 90% of the time when I have a student who goes to a certain, like who's like, wants to play their drum sounds in their drum kit, then they're not hearing anything, they're in the wrong octave. So, there we go. So what I'm going to do here is, I got my drum rack in here. You can also get a drum rack from instruments, and the drum rack is right there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull in some drum sounds. Now, drum sounds can come from all sorts of places, but if you go into Ableton Live over here in your drums section, let's see, where it says drums, up here, drum hits. Here's your drum hits. Oh, also this reminds, I don't know why this reminded me, but if you have already used a 30-day demo of Ableton Live, we were sending some an email chain around. I read it earlier with my fellow teachers. If you have already used up your 30-day demo for Ableton Live, apparently they reset the demos, so you can have 30 more days to work with it as a demo. So just so you know, try it out. All right, so we got our drum hits here. And let's say I want to grab some percussion sounds to drag in here. So I'm going to go here to conga and right, let's grab Pete, conga Pete. I'm going to drag conga Pete down to C2, whatever. And there it is. Now, what you'll notice is that once I drag it in here, it automatically puts in a sampler instrument in here. And we're going to talk about how this works in detail in another class, but I just want you to notice that it put this in here. And actually, if I wanted to, I can go in here and I can edit my sample a little bit. I can drag the start point. I could stop the end point. I can drag the end point. So you can do some sample editing. And if you want to transpose it, there's your transpose. There you go. And you can also use your arrow keys to go up and down. So if you can see here, I'm clicking my arrow keys to move it up and down. And here's a cool little trick with Ableton Live. If you want it to go up or down by an octave, hold down the Shift key. If I hold the Shift key, it'll go up and down by an octave. So that's pretty cool. So there's one little percussion sound, and let's get some bongos. Get this one here, and we'll put that on this note. And this one here will go on G. And let's grab a bell. Let's grab this bell. I'm going to stick it here on B. Awesome. And Triangle Pete. I'm going to drag that one down and put it here on A sharp. Awesome. And basically I've just built up my whole kit like this. Let's get a timbale. Timbale Pete. Let's put that on F. Cool. Tambourine. Put that here on E. And let's put a shaker on C and D. Yeah, cool, we'll do that. This one and this one. Move that over. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so we got all these sounds in here. And I just made my own little drum rack. Now, one thing with the drum racks, let's go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and record a little something in here. Awesome. And I put that groove on and it makes it sound so much better, right? Cool. What's groove? Hunter, you're gonna have to rewatch the video, buddy. We had a whole discussion about groove. You're gonna have to rewatch that video. Or this video, the one part 2 from today that talks about groove. All right, so, okay, we got this in here. Now let's say I got this in here and I like it, but the sounds are too loud or whatever. Well, down here on my drum rack, over here, I have a couple little buttons that I can push to see things, okay? So here's my macro knobs, and the macro knobs allow you to control lots of different parameters of different drums. We're gonna I don't know if we're going to get to macro stuff with this class or not. I don't think it goes that far. But over here, I have this level here. And in here, it has my mixer, so I can see all my different sounds. So I could turn down like my tambourine, for example. Turn that cowbell down. Okay. But another place you can see that's probably easier to actually work in is right over here in the percussion section, this little triangle, boop. Open that up and it expands your drum rack. And now all my different instruments have my levels here, down here at the bottom. Cool. So I can play that now. So that's like some basic mixing stuff you can do inside of your drum rack. So every drum rack every drum pad is actually, when you drag a sound onto it, like we saw, it puts a sample there, and it puts the sample inside of this simpler instrument. Now, this is actually an instrument that comes live, and one thing I want to pull your attention to is that each square box in here, each cell, can be its whole instrument rack with instruments and effects, which is pretty cool. So before we talk about that, let's pause on the drum rack for a second and let's talk about instrument racks. So what I'm going to do is we're going to come back to that. I'm going to make a new sound over here, and we're going to come back to the drum racks in a second. We're going to talk about instrument racks for a minute. So I'm going to pull up an instrument. Let's grab a bass sound. Okay, well here we'll use this muted bass wow. And you can see the muted bass wow is analog. And I'm just going to go ahead and play whatever. I'm going to play something like pretty steady. All right, cool. So we have that little basic thing. And I just played something steady and basic just so we could play around with the sound of the synth. So I have that. Now, over here, I'm gonna use let's add some effects into this. So let's use a auto filter, drag that down, and boop. Let's put a little compression on it. There we go. Turn it down a little bit so I'm not clipping the crap out of everything. Saturator. this EQ8 in here. LFOs. Yeah, we're going to talk about LFOs when we talk about synthesizers. Put this in here. Put a little high cut on it. All right, let's just say this sound right here. Actually, let's put a little chorus on here as well. I'll use a third party. I'll use that micro shift. So we have all these sounds here, all these effects that go into this. And let's say, all right, cool, that sounds pretty good. I like this sound. I want it to come back all the time. I want it to always be like this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab all of these. I'm just going to hold down Shift and click everything that's in the bottom here. And now hit Command G to group it. When I hit Command G, you'll notice over here on the left, it gave me an instrument rack. And there we are. The instrument rack now contains everything in it. So if I go ahead and rename this instrument rack with hitting Command R to rename, instrument rack, we'll call this one Simple Bass Spread, because it's a little bit wide. And now I can save this, and then we go under instrument rack, and I can move this actually to like another place if I wanted to, but we're just going to keep it here for now. And if I make a new track, I can pull up this Simple Bass Spread, and it will pull up all the plugins that were on there. And that's an instrument rack. An instrument rack basically allows you to save an instrument with all the effects, everything together all at once. And that's in the notes here. If we go to instrument racks, they contain at least one instrument and multiple effects. You create an instrument rack by selecting all the devices you want in the rack, hold Shift, and then hit Command G. And if you want to save the instrument rack for another session, rename it with Command R, then hit the disk button and save it wherever you want. And then macros allow you to assign multiple parameters to one knob. So for example, if I wanted to have this knob right here, like on my keyboard, let's say I want to have this knob on my keyboard, whoa, like, I don't know, some knob. Control this one. Here. If I want to have this keyboard knob here control a bunch of stuff. So let's have this knob control my filter, and also it's going to control the drive amount here. And it's also going to control the amount of my micro shift. That. Oops. So now, wait, hold on. Let's move this over to here. Solo. So I can move things around, and it's controlling 3 different sounds, or 3 different parameters with one knob, which is pretty dope. Can you include the instrument rack in a template? Absolutely, you can include the instrument rack in a template. Yep. No problem at all. Yep. How do you assign them to the macros? So what you do is you click on this button here that says map. The map button, click on that. And also it's in the notes, just so you know, it's in the notes right here. Click the macro button, click the map button, select the parameter, click map under the knob you want. So it's all right there in the notes. But here's how you do it. You click the map button. You click whatever parameter you want to map, and then you tell it which knob you want to map it to. Is what you're doing similar to the one knob hardware? One knob hardware. I don't know what the one knob hardware is. Are you talking about Waves? Waves has a bunch of stuff called one knob, but it's not hardware, it's software. Yeah, so to answer your question, I'm not sure. Maybe, I mean, this stuff would be hard to do with hardware across different synthesizers. What's so cool about this is that we could take different plugins from all over the industry and use all sorts of different stuff. But in this case here, like for hardware, you could assign one knob to control multiple parameters if the hardware supports it. I'm trying to think of hardware that supports it, and I can't. But I don't know what one knob hardware is. KH. I don't know what KH means. Anyway, we'll come back to that, and the answer is maybe. I don't know. All right. So one thing that's really cool about when you start mapping things, though, is when you click the map button here. Let me just show you like a couple possibilities with this. I click the map button here, and if I go up top, it has all these. It shows me my for macro 1 here. I'm going to delete these for macro 2. I don't need these. Macro 1. This is my knob, the macro 1 knob. And you can see here I've got a minimum and a maximum. So I can actually restrict how much movement the knob actually adjusts. So if I only want my drive to be from 0 dB, to start at 0 dB and go to 10 dB, and I want my auto filter frequency to start at 200 hertz and just open up to 4,000 hertz, 4K, I can do that. And then the mix, let's just leave the mix alone. So, Edman, you're way off topic. We're talking about Ableton Live right now. So, whatever you're comfortable with. All right. So in here, I've got these three set up. So now if I turn the knob here, let's play on that. So now I've got this really basic thing going on here. And if I turn it up, you can see how these are all three turning here. See, this frequency is turning, the drive is turning, and the mix is turning. So it's spreading out and getting more distorted. Which is pretty darn cool. Oh, you know what? I forgot to change my thing here. Wait. This is telling me the wrong thing. Right now I'm just messing around. That's not true. Teaching Ableton Live. There we go. Done. Boop. All right. I just realized that's been the wrong thing for a while. Album 2 on Friday. Album 3 in quarantine. What's the title of album 3 gonna be, Bardo? What's the title of album 3? All right. So so that's how you set up your macros. The macros are pretty dope. Okay. If I want to have a MIDI parameter connected to a knob on my keyboard here, there's a couple things that it's actually pretty dope. One is if you hit Command M, if I wanted to like have it so this knob here always controls these parameters by this macro right here. We're just going to call this one filter spread. Parapraxis, the Corona Chronic. Yeah. I like that. So if I want to have it control this, what I do is I hit Command M, and you'll notice Command M is the same as this MIDI button up here in the upper right hand corner, right up here. See this up here? Right there, right there. If I hit that, everything turns blue. I can now assign things to this, to whatever I want. So for example, if I wanted to assign a knob to this macro control here, I can click on the macro control, and then turn the knob here like that. Okay. Just turn the knob. And that makes it pretty easy. So that's one way that Ableton Live works with macros. And that's, I mean, macros with knobs and MIDI assigning stuff. That's the main way that it works. But another way that's actually really cool is if I have, here, let me unassign that real quick. Boop, just hit delete to unassign it. Command M and hit delete. So I've got this bass. Here. All right, so I've got this auto filter in here. See how it's got a blue hand on it? It's got a blue hand. That blue hand, and I think it's just called the blue hand, I'm pretty sure, is basically it tells me that my controller is controlling that plugin or that effect automatically. So I actually don't have to sit here and map a whole bunch of knobs and stuff to things to control things. So if my keyboard is set up to control Ableton Live natively, just to work with Ableton Live, then this blue hand will be here, and it will just automatically, no matter what, if I click on something and I move the knob, it's gonna control it. See how that works? I'm literally just turning the knob. I didn't have to like assign these or anything, so I can. And I didn't have to assign anything to anything in here. And that's super dope. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know what other DAWs do that, to be honest. That's an Ableton only thing as far as I know. Okay. So keep this whole idea of the instrument racks in your brains for now. Instrument rack is an instrument plus effects that I can save, and I can assign macros and stuff like that. So couple questions. Let's see here. Bado Beats says, in Mod 1, Ryan lightly touched on programming sounds and creating patches to map signals in Logic. I was interested in it, but he stopped abruptly and never heard about it again. Are we going to learn that, how to program our own signature sounds, reverb effects, and all? So we're not going to talk about it in Logic. We are going to talk about programming sounds. Actually, that's a whole section. That's a whole, in normal class, it would be a whole week of synthesis, which we're going to do next. Synthesis and sampling are the two next things we're doing. So yeah, you're going to be learning about how to make your own sounds. And then reverbs and stuff like that, kind of. It depends on how much time we have. I mean, if we have to spend the whole rest of this class in quarantine lockdown, which we may, I mean, that might be the reality because, you know, it's crazy out there. If we have to do that, then we're going to have plenty of time to talk about all this stuff because the way the class is done is going to have to shift for this next couple months because of this virus. So the answer is we're definitely going to talk about it. How much we talk about it is yet to be seen. So Kishan says, when you assign the knobs to something else, will they automatically be shut off from that auto filter? Yes. So if I assign this main knob here to something, then it's always going to be controlling that. So no matter if I assign it to something like this, you see how it's controlling this fader right now, right? Well, now it's no longer controlling this auto filter. The other knob is still controlling the auto filter, but that knob is not. So what I recommend not doing is don't assign these first couple of knobs to things. I would recommend, if you want to assign knobs to things, assign like these last few knobs because they're usually pretty useless for stuff. It depends on how much you're doing. Usually the first few knobs are the most useful ones. And that's just, but you're just going to have to try it out and see. Usually assigning knobs, especially if you assign these last few knobs to things, doesn't really interfere with stuff too much. All right, it's that time where we are going to take a break again. So be back in 10 minutes. It's 4:51, so be back at 5:02, something like that. All right? How are we doing? Are there any other questions that you've been sitting on? I mean, y'all are really good about asking questions, and I love it. But you can also see our class count went down today because I guess people are actually in John's class finally. He got Canvas going and the O2R. So, any excuse me, any questions or anything that you've been holding in? No? You're in both? That's funny. Off topic, but how much mixing processing do you normally do before sending stems to Pro Tools? I actually don't send stems to Pro Tools ever. I do everything in Ableton Live. If I did need to send stems to Pro Tools, as I produce, I like things to sound good, so I actually do quite a bit of processing on stuff as I'm going. I kind of like work on the mix as I'm going, and then what happens is I hit a point where I'm like, okay, now I need to focus in on the mix. But I do all my mixing in Ableton Live. It sounds great. It sounds fine. Who was it? We were talking about Walker and Royce. Sam was talking about Walker and Royce. Sam does everything in Ableton Live. I know a lot of people who do all their everything, mixing and everything, in straight up in Ableton Live. So there's not a reason to bring it into Pro Tools unless you're trying to learn how to use Pro Tools better. I recommend for all my students to use Pro Tools as much as possible because that is the industry standard. But yeah, I don't actually do anything in Pro Tools anymore unless I have to. All right, so actually now it's 4:53. Be back at 5:05. Give you a couple extra minutes to stretch. All right, I'm gonna stop recording right now. There we go.